What's going on, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitch, I guess technically Twitch, but Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, we're all over all those social media platforms. I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter is where you can find me, co-founder and data guru here at OccupyFantasy.com, alongside Brian at BrianJesterFF on Twitter. How's it going, Brian?
What's up, Moose? Happy end of the year. Almost here in New Year's Eve. I can't believe we've been doing these shows for 16 weeks now. It feels so crazy.
Yeah, pretty nuts. Just seems like the year just started. But hey, off to a new year. Hopefully, some New Year's resolutions, some new processes, some new results, and we'll go from there. So let's jump right into it. This is the $1 Million Mission, where we review Brian's 150 lineups over on DraftKings or FanDuel. Almost getting there on Yahoo from your bankroll challenge, and so maybe we can include those in on the final episode on your Yahoo bankroll challenge. We also look at what other pros did and kind of see if we can learn anything. So as we jump right into it, we can take a look at how you did over on DraftKings, and you did 37.50 in entries, 14.68 in winnings for a negative 61% ROI.
Yeah, so I had 0 Joe Burrow, which made it obviously very difficult. I was underweight on T. Higgins, which made it very difficult. And yeah, I just didn't have I had a couple lineups that were live late with Chief stacks. They obviously didn't pan out, but yeah, pretty typical week once again, as we've been saying this every single weekend. I actually didn't play 150 on FanDuel this week with Christmas and the holidays and schedules being weird and being at a different house. So, the whole process was messed up, but did have some WFFC Fan Championship tickets, as I know a lot of you watching did as well. And maybe we should talk about that strategy a little bit because I think it does depend on how you play those end of year GPPs if you have multiple tickets, depending on your bankroll and your goals.
Yeah, really quick, I do just want to show the year to date. A lot of entries, not as many winnings for a minus 43% ROI.
Yeah, and the typical caveat, this is just 150 max GPPs, does not include satellites, does not include small field, does not include showdown, does not include other sports, just NFL large field GPPs, which are #hard.
Yes. And then we take a look at how we did over on the DraftKings pick 'em pool. Turns out picking bad teams usually is not a good idea. But we went 2-3 last week with our entries of Carolina, Houston, Baltimore, Chicago, and New Orleans. Brian, you and I were talking about it throughout the week, is that I do like the strategy that we have, identify the most popular teams and then just fade them. But I think we do have to maybe pull the horse back a little bit when we pick teams like New Orleans, where the lines moved to 7 points because the quarterback can't throw the pass.
I still don't think it was too bad of a pick. And again, for those who missed it last week, Moose and I are right on the bubble, and we realized that a lot of teams ahead of us were picking popular teams, and we knew that if we could identify the popular teams, if we just pick the opposite, we get that double leverage. If the chalk loses on any given week for the final couple of weeks here, then we have a chance to skyrocket up the leaderboards. The chalk being defined as teams that are 25% or higher picked in the DraftKings pick'em pool, and we nailed all of them. I think actually 9 of our 10 we nailed, which was the first big step, and then we just needed them to actually play well or play poorly, I guess, in terms of the chalk. But 7 of the 10 chalk teams won, which means, Moose, we weren't going to win anyways, no matter who we picked.
Exactly, yeah. That didn't matter at all. I guess #chalk sucks. But
never fails.
Never fails, no. So, yeah, if you want to talk about, I'll throw back up the logo here. If you want to talk about your fan championship and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I was talking with a couple of our staff members, a couple of OccupyFantasy.com members. I was talking with you guys and some other friends just about my personal strategy. So for one, I can't play less than $3 contests on FanDuel or DraftKings because of, I guess, the winnings or ROI or entry fee requirement, whatever it's called. So I can't play the very sick plus EV 25 cent to $1 WFFC Fan Championship qualifiers. And as you guys have seen my results most of the year, any $3 or higher qualifier, I didn't do that well this year compared to previous years. I only ended up with 9 Fan Championship tickets, which was pretty disappointing. So to me, 16,000 person field. Did it make sense to enter multiple quarterbacks? I didn't care if I airballed. Clearly, a 2K drop in the bucket or whatever wasn't going to change my ROI for the year. My goal was, let's go for the gusto. And what's the best way to do that? I actually played the same quarterback in all 9 lineups, played 3x1 stacks. And I actually might have had a chance if Cincinnati didn't go off so much, because I did all 9 Buffalo Bill stacks that had Isaiah McKenzie, had Stephon Diggs, included Damian Harris. So I had some chances. I think 7 of my 9 lineups cashed. I got back close to 3K, I think, which was, a nice little consolation prize. But whereas others who a $250 ticket would be the biggest GPP you'll enter all season, a min cash would, dramatically increase your bankroll. To those people who asked, I said it's probably better to diversify your quarterback and your stack selection. That way, if 1 or 2 hits, then you have a chance at, one, winning the whole thing, of course, but also getting some more cashes, where if you just entered all or nothing and that stack fails, now you're trying to collect tickets all year and you get 0 to show for it by the time the GPP rolls around.
Yeah, nothing worse than just airballing a large, potentially life-changing min-cash GPP like that, where you got a couple $100 bankroll, and you're like, man, min-cash, I didn't have any tickets. What was the min-cash for that contest?
Well, $400.
Yeah, so, if you have a couple $100 bankroll and you have a couple tickets, you definitely should plan to not only win it, but, I mean, it would be nice to try and at least get a couple min-cashes in there. So, yeah, I do like the diversifying thing that some members or some users had as well. Brian, I actually wanted to bring this up. I didn't know when to bring this up, but actually this is kind of like a mental thing that I've been struggling with this week. So as I told you, I told staff chat, I told you all throughout the week, I actually liked the Bengals stack a lot, and they were one of my highest rated teams. But because of Christmas, because of all the obligations, went to the parents' house a day early to help out, I decided just not to play. And I would have absolutely probably had a spike week, almost to an extent. But because I didn't play, I didn't get that spike week. So how do you deal with the fact that spike weeks only happen a handful of times, 1 to 3 times a season, and the week you miss would have potentially been that spike week? How do you mentally handle that?
It's tough, man. It's tough. And the spike weeks always seem to have the potential to happen on weeks you take off. And I think this is just a skill set that if you're into DFS, trading, crypto, whatever, there's literally opportunities all the time, right? Every second of the day, there's an opportunity to trade, to buy an NFT, to play DFS, to bet on a sporting event, to literally do whatever. There's always an opportunity. And the thing you have to realize is that there are slates that we're going to take off and we lose. We just don't remember those because we only remember the what ifs. And 2, to that point, you have to just come to the understanding. I struggle with this. I know a lot of pros struggle with this as well. Is especially once you see screenshots, right? You see screenshots of people people on your timeline. You just gotta understand that every single time we play DFS, there are winners, no matter what, right? Someone's going to win the Millie every week. Someone's going to win the 4-4-4 every week. Every single year, there are going to be massive winners in the end of year championships. There are going to be league winners, satellite winners. People are going to win best ball. They're winners all the time. And the fact that we just have to understand that they're going to be winners, and just by nature, we're going to know some of them. And by nature, we know that we're going to miss out on some of them. It's just a concept you have to ingrain in your mind that it's going to happen, and try not to let it affect you mentally going forward. And as an extension of that, try not to force yourself to play every single slate because you don't want to miss out on those potential spike weeks. Yeah,
exactly. As Justin points out here in the chat, don't make lineups if you don't enter. Learned that lesson a long time ago. Yeah, thank goodness I didn't actually build lineups, because I would that would have just made it 100 times worse. If I'd be like, yeah, I actually had the optimal.
Yeah, very smart point there from Justin. Very true.
Definitely. So,
should we talk about those Bengal stacks a little bit though? I'm curious to hear why you had them as one of your top stacks, because I know there's a lot of, and I wrote in the description here on YouTube, the video description, I wrote unwarranted Joe Burrow tilt, because after the fact, I was very tilted about Cincinnati stacks, and our staff, just behind the curtain, was a little upset about Joe Burrow stacks popping off. And the reason I was so tilted is because we've talked all year, right, on the Saturday streams. Their pass rate over expectation generally has been pretty run heavy. They moved to a 7-point favorite. When they've been leading, they definitely run the ball a ton, not just in neutral situations, but the fact that they threw nearly 50 times in a game that they were winning by 2+ scores, basically from the jump, was just like to miss out on that ceiling for whatever reason. Then we get after the fact that Joe Burrow felt slighted by the defensive coordinator. He talked about how I guess they felt Baltimore ran up the score on them last season, so they felt to do the same this year. Obviously, we didn't know that. It'd been great to know that they would be throwing up 30 with 3 minutes left. But all in all, I mean, we know that Cincinnati stacks have a huge ceiling. We knew Baltimore was dealing with secondary issues. We knew that their offense wasn't going to stay on the field as much, likely with Josh Johnson. So I see it now. I'm not as tilted about it as I was immediately after the fact.
Yeah, it was just more of like, again, the secondary issues, divisional matchup. I feel like you said, the ceiling for Baltimore there. I didn't expect them to go off for like a bajillion points.
You didn't expect him to pass for the third most yards ever in NFL history or whatever it was?
No, I didn't expect that. But I just felt that, the sense that Cincinnati could get there in a high-scoring game. Not as many other good spots. I didn't like the Baltimore side of that. But yeah, I definitely just like the Bengals side. I didn't expect for a million years that they'd go off as much as they did. I just thought that they had that their ceiling opportunity was there with all the opportunities, the situation.
For sure, and they were cheaper too, so I definitely get it. And this goes into, this is what we talk about, qualitative and contextual data, where projections don't tell the whole story. Projections generally don't tell us defensive injuries on the other side of the ball, and they also don't tell us any potential motivational issues that there may be, which again is not something we're going to know ahead of time. Maybe if we read into the quote from the quarter, but again, then we're just guessing at that point. So I think really what it comes down to is that what we can control is, there's a higher range of outcomes when teams are missing players in the secondary or just on defense, and sometimes weird shit happens in divisional games.
Exactly, yeah. As .bet says, I played the Bengals basically on the fact of the last game against Baltimore. Didn't do nearly as much research as I normally do. I think that's the reason I played them. Pretty square, but it worked out.
And I've seen some commentary, yesterday and today, talking about how Baltimore plays really heavy man coverages. Cincinnati passes more than usual against man coverages, and I think that's probably the next step in NFL DFS analysis is if we can find predictive run pass / efficiency rates versus coverage types. I know there's work out there that does that. I'm still skeptical of some of the predictive nature of those types of analysis, but maybe that was another reason that played a part in the Bengals passing so much in this game.
Yeah, you got to remember, cover 2 is like the most unstoppable defense ever. So the fact that there wasn't as much cover 2 over Baltimore just means
there was. I think it was Hayden Weeks of Underdog. He posts kind of a post-mortem every week on his blog, and he was talking about how Joe Burrow is top 10 in cover 0, cover 1, and cover 3 against cover 0, cover 1, and cover 3. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Ravens play primarily those coverages. But the only takeaway I got from that was he's not cover 2 because cover 2 is impossible to beat apparently. So.
Yeah. Chris brings up a good point. He says, counterpoint, at what week does the Bengals fan not like the Bengals? And I think, I don't know if this makes any sense, Brian, but as a fan of the Bengals, I want them to do well. But that means that I'm also invested in them and knowing what spots are good for them because I'm following them as a team. I want them to make the playoffs. I want them to do win, all stuff like that. So if I know they're not in a good spot, like they have to be in a really good spot for me to play them because I'm like overlooking it. I want everything to work out well.
I think there's a lot of merit to that, by the way. And I think this is a really good point because it's overwhelming how many contests are out there, how many sports and whatnot. And I was talking to Nir Ramada, who, for those who don't know, he's our PGA writer, really successful DFS player. For Showdown, he focuses heavily on Nebraska college football showdowns and Chargers showdown slates because he's fans of those teams. He went to Nebraska. He's he follows the team religiously, and he dominates Nebraska showdown because he's so tuned into what the team does. And Moose, I know you're in the sports betting thing on the side of things, so I know you've heard of people who specialize, especially like college basketball, because there's so many freaking teams that they specialize in a conference or just a specific team, and they follow those teams instead of trying to be specialists in all of college basketball. They just specialize in the ACC, or instead of specializing in all of college football showdown, you specialize in Nebraska Cornhuskers Showdown like Miramata does. So maybe if you know teams better, NFC East teams, for example, maybe you go heavier on those showdown slates because you're more familiar with the teams and the ins and outs.
Yeah, another example for me is one of my girlfriend's best friend went to college in Virginia Tech. We've gone there a couple times. Games are always fun to go to. So anytime Virginia Tech showed up on college basketball showdown, which is like 3 times ever, I was invested in those because you kind of know the players, you kind of get a feel for what's going on. I actually like that concept of, the fact that you are so knowledgeable about something from a passion standpoint as well.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as betting gets bigger and bigger, right? Like maybe you only specialize in free throw props. Maybe you only specialize in first team to score type thing. Like, I mean, if you specialize in one thing, it's kind of like we talk about in DFS contests. If you specialize in, example for me, the 3-3-3 League of Legends, 100-player league every single day, you specialize it, you know it in and out, you can beat that better than if you're just playing a random contest. So I think there's a lot of merit just to thinking about what you're good at, who you know, what you know, and applying that.
And I think just to wrap it all up, I would love to see, there's the bankroll tracker out there. I would love to see like your DFS bankroll tracker based off players or teams. And so it's like, for example, for you, Brian, is like, yeah, you absolutely crushed Patriot stacks. Like, okay, like digging deep into why that happens. I think that would be pretty interesting. I don't know how.
It's pretty funny because some of my biggest wins have been Patriots showdown slates, which is I mean, obviously the million skews that, but I mean, like I had the Patriots Bills game a couple weeks ago, so no, that's interesting. I think it's, there's some teams maybe in NFL that you just understand better or can predict better. And I think it goes a lot with understanding the coaches and their tendencies. Someone like Belichick who's been around for a while, you know what they can do and what they won't do. So that that's a really good point as well. Very interesting.
Definitely. Justin says, with it being so hard to hit a first overall in these large GPPs, does quarterback plus 3 and a run back make sense to run for certain teams?
So quarterback plus 3 is still too much. I know it won. I think it was on DraftKings this week, right? It was the Burrow, Higgins, Chase, Mixon stacks, which is unbelievable. That's still generally too much. We've looked at it. If you go back to the Week 7 edition, Justin, of this $1 Million Mission, we talked specifically about the different stack types and how good they are in large field tournaments. What we found is that 3x1s, 2x1s, 2x0s are the way to go. Anything over 3 is generally too much for a larger main slate. Yeah, it will hit sometimes, but the leverage is the field actually plays it more than you think they should, given how crazy it sounds.
Yeah. Dot says, I know you hinted on this in Premium Pod for showdown slates, but are we cautious of the guys coming off the COVID list moving forward?
Yeah, I think you have to be. And again, we're not immunologists by any sense or doctors, but I think we just have to take a look and just realize guys coming off the COVID list on Friday, especially if they're all on the list for like a week or so, and or we hear that they reported symptoms, especially now with the new rule that I guess the CDC says you only have to quarantine for 5 days when you get symptoms, once the symptoms start, and the NFL is adopting that approach, so we might see more guys coming off the COVID list quicker. It's a lot of moving parts with the COVID. I think if you have to break a tie, you probably don't want to go with the guy who just came off the COVID list because there are potential conditioning concerns. And just in general, like maybe they didn't have an effect from the virus, right? Maybe they're completely asymptomatic. But the fact that they missed practice for 5 days, like that's a big deal. Even in just like professional athletes not conditioning for 5 days or whatever it is certainly can have an impact.
Yeah, you see that in NBA, like where some players are coming off the COVID list and they're like, this player's still out because of conditioning. It's like, that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you want to hop over to Fantasy Labs to see, kind of look at what the winners did and all that stuff like that?
Yeah, the biggest thing I want to talk about are the chalk running backs this week. So maybe we go to the Millie, look at what pros did, look at the high dollar stuff, look what pros did, because as you pull it up, Moose, we had a lot of value running backs this week. We had Justin Jackson for the Chargers, who ended up really popular. We had James Robinson ended up incredibly popular on DraftKings because of his pricing. We had Ronald Jones, who ended up popular. And then Alexander Madison more so on FanDuel, where he was only 5,500, not nearly as popular on DraftKings at 6,800. So maybe we just focus on the Justin Jackson, James Robinson, Ronald Jones trio to see how pros handled them.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So overall in the field, 44% for Justin Jackson. They're almost 40% for James Robinson. Somehow, almost 20% of the 1% of the lineups had James Robinson, him scoring 1 point after just shattering his Achilles?
Yeah, dude, it's because the top 69 lineups in I think the DraftKings Millionaire Maker were all Joe Burrow stacks. Like it didn't really matter who you had, right? As long as you had Joe Burrow and two and two Bengals, you could have someone like James Robinson score 1 point and be in your lineup.
Just rub it in. Just stick the knife in deeper.
Believe me, dude. It's stuck deep in my back too.
Yeah, we're good. So give me some names, and I will go ahead and start. I guess we should start off with you. See what you did. Is the whole
Yeah, sure. Might as well. That's a good idea. Novel concept here on the show.
Yep. So if it ever loads, all right. So for running backs, look at exposure. You had 44% Justin Jackson, which basically matched the field. You kind of matched the field with Ronald Jones, and you went under on James Robinson.
Yeah, I actually definitely underpredicted how popular James Robinson would be, for sure. But my goal is, I think we kind of saw this on, and I actually didn't even accomplish the goal, clearly, but we talked about this on Saturday. Oh, no, we didn't. We talked about it. So, Chris talked about it in the plug. That's where it was. We saw this a few weeks ago when we had the Dearness Johnson, Mark Ingram, Ramondre Stevenson value running back week. And we saw that most pros went over on Dearness, who was basically Justin Jackson in this scenario. They kind of matched on Mark Ingram, who's Ronald Jones in this scenario, or I guess James Robinson in this scenario. And then they kind of matched on Stevenson or didn't play him at all. So to me, in hindsight, I would have liked to have gotten more Justin Jackson here. Mm-hmm. And I'm fine with the rest of my exposures. Maybe more James Robinson. Is Achilles exploding aside, I think I probably should have more of him. But the biggest regret is not having more Justin Jackson. It doesn't matter that he scored 30 points or whatever.
Yeah. Ed, what's up? He says, do you have a different strategy for building your satellites versus MME GPP? Do you play the same lineups, or do you have different builds, or does it depend on the number of entries? It's a good question.
Very, very good question. So I've had a more focused approach this year because in an effort to cut out some of the fat from my bankroll, because there's always ways we can trim, money burning opportunities, right? Because before I would just enter all my 150 lineups, I pick random ones, put them in GPPs. But now I've spent more time thoughtfully building lineups that don't need as much risk or reward. And this goes for League of Legends, it goes for MMA, it goes for NFL Showdown. So I've been building specific lineups for satellites under 100 players. Like the ones that have like 300 players or more, I'm still entering kind of the same risk reward. But like the big dollar satellites, I'm entering a specific lineup that only has a couple of differentiation points. Doesn't get too crazy, and it's more thoughtful than just letting the builder take care of most of the work. Whereas because in the builder, right, I might end up with because I had 6% T Higgins or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. I probably wouldn't have put him into any of my satellite lineups, and I didn't, and that goes to show. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it, but I think definitely building a more dedicated lineup for your satellites is a way better approach than just sticking in one of your random GPP lineups.
Makes sense to me. Cool. So, Brian, I thought you were going to be 150 unique every week. You're 149 out of 150.
Dude, what lineup could have possibly been duped this week? Jesus Christ.
All right, let's see real quick.
I feel like someone's just trolling me now. I don't know how. I don't know how they would unless they have access to my account. But I'm just curious who the hell is duping me. It's probably some other random dude.
Let's see here. Yeah, it's just somebody who just reads the plug and just listens to what you do. It's like, all right, I'm gonna try and just do whatever he does.
I build 150 lineups how I think he would build them and hope to dupe him once.
Yeah. Let's see
but
here.
While you're looking for this, after this, maybe we go to the 4444 or whatever the big dollar one and just see what some of the pros did.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. All right, so here it is. So it was a bill stack that got duped.
3x1 bills.
Surprised that one got duped.
I guess just because outside of the stack it was pretty chalky, so I guess I see it. But Jay Sam is on the list now.
Definitely. So you say you want me to head over to the 4444?
Yeah, I think they had one this week, right? The fourth down conversion, maybe it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only 250 entries, so maybe it's not, but still 7 lineups. So shout out to Ricky D, who we've talked about. I think we talked about on that Week 7 episode. Fantastic NFL player, won 200K in this. So what were his exposures at running back?
So we look here. Fantasy Lab crashed. So try to give him a shout out every week. It just always crashes.
I know he's been crushing this year in the NFL. So shout out to him.
Yeah. So look at his running back exposures. He had 85% Justin Jackson, 57% David Montgomery, 42% James Robinson, and 28% Rex Burkhead will do that for you.
Hell yeah. So went over on Justin Jackson like we thought, matched or roughly matched James Robinson. Didn't play any Ronald Jones, but got the top two right. Actually, you know what? Maybe we go back to the Millie and just see what the pros did because, only 7 injuries, things can get skewed a bit here.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to start with Ox and Duck, Ox and Duck and Vasa, who have proven to be the projections guys this year. Let's see what they did.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah. All right, so Ox and Duck, Fantasy Labs crashed again.
Man, lucky there's a free resource.
I know, right? So let's see.
Yeah, so you
go back to the. Go ahead. Do whatever you're about to say.
No, I was gonna say if you guys have any more questions while we're doing this, just let us know in the chat. We'll be here for a couple more minutes.
Yeah. If you like it, we got new webcams, so you can actually see our face and full 1080p now.
I know. Maybe we'll get less views because of that, though.
Yeah, never know. All right, so let's see. Ox and Duck, running backs. Cool. It actually didn't crash this time. So he went 52% Justin Jackson, 50% James Robinson, and 48% Ronald Jones.
Okay, so he went heavy on those guys, but all kind of equally. So that's interesting. That's an interesting approach. What about Vasa? But the takeaway here is he went really heavy on those guys.
Yeah.
And we know he's a value projections. I wouldn't even say heavy. I think exclusive projections, exclusive type of guy.
So Vasa only did 5 lineups.
Look at that bankroll management after winning $2.5 million. Only entered 5 entries in the Millie.
Yeah.
All right. Usual suspects. Let's look at Osimo. I'm gonna pull up the NFL rankings on my side, and we'll list them off real quick.
Of course. Where is he? All right, Osimo. So he had 49% Justin Jackson, 39% Ronald Jones, and 33% James Robinson.
Okay, and he also played Madison pretty heavily as well. Pretty similar. But again, what's interesting so far, Moose, is no one's gone super heavy on Jackson. So maybe I didn't do that bad of a match the field situation. And again, it's a very unique slate with 3 super value running backs that were great plays. Yeah. All right,
really quick,
Utica, we gotta look at.
Yeah, while that's coming up, Rockies has a question. Do you think with Cup being 9.5K this week, it's too expensive overall to double stack LAR?
Dude, it's wild. It's so wild, his price. What we have to think about, again, it's only Tuesday. We're going to do some more research as the week goes on, but this is a 14-game slate. The only other time we get 14-game slates are basically the end of the year. So we have to think about how correlation affects or how correlation changes when there's so many games on the slate. We have to think about, 9,500 is nuts. What other value is presented on the slate? And as we've seen before, guys can be super expensive and not even hit value truly, right? But score like 20, 25 like we saw Devontae Adams 2 weeks ago and still be in the optimal lineup. So with Trey Lance, with some of these other running backs that already look to be big values, I don't think it's too expensive, but it's an interesting thought process, something that we're going to think about as the week goes on.
Yeah, very interesting. And Justin says, Johnny says first, question about projections players. Would a good set of projections already factor in anything of importance, thus letting you focus on correlation? This is specific to Ox and Duck.
Yeah, and when I say projections, this is also including like simulations, right? So I think a lot of simulations will pull the correlation in there. So yeah, I think so because I was doing some research this week on small field stuff and looking at what Ox and Duck and Whistles Go Woo do, and the fact that they're projections heavy, but they're playing their small field lineups with just a slight hint of differentiation as to show you that they're not actually playing just the mega chalk in those fields, shows that there is more thought to just like jamming projections or simulations, or they have some sort of algorithm on their side. The field size is X. I need my lineups to have Y risk or something like that. Yeah. That's how I imagine they're doing it, and they obviously do a fantastic job of it. So it's, we say projections players, and it's not that simple, obviously, but really what it comes down to is like incredible math, simulation, projections, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And then the question from Justin says, do you use mini stacks in addition to team/game stacks? ended up with a little bit less Jackson myself because I didn't want to run anyone back from the Texans.
Yeah, I don't think you have to mini stack everybody, right? Just because you play Jackson don't mean you have to run someone back from the Texans. You could, your tight end or your other running back could be a mini stack or whatever it may be. So yeah, I do run mini stacks. I try to correlate when I can, especially when I'm thoughtfully building in smaller fields. But again, it's not a requirement for every single player in your lineup.
Makes sense. Cool. So we look at Utica. I always forget how to spell his name. I had to go over to Road Grinders and find it out. He had 53% James Robinson, 38% Justin Jackson, 37% Alexander Madison, and 31% Ronald Jones.
So 30% plus of all, which we see as a common thread so far, and not crazy overweight on Jackson, but close to the field. Okay. Yeah. Let's check out whistles if he maxed this one. The whistles go woo.
Yep. He had 21% Madison, 17% Justin Jackson, 17% James Robinson.
This is interesting. So again, we've never claimed whistles to be an excellent large field GPP player. So this is interesting to see this different approach where he has a flatter approach, only 21%, but played a bunch of guys 10% plus. Who am I to say what's optimal for whistles go woo, right? Most like this dude's crushed everything. But I will say it's head scratching to see this exposure unless we see a bunch of other guys do it similarly.
Yeah. I guess we can look at Chipotle.
Yeah, Chipotle and Papo, see what they did.
If I could actually spell it right.
Yeah, I'm just looking here to see who else might be interesting.
Wait, did Chipotle not play it?
Did you not spell it right? Chipotle, you old.
Oh, yeah. I should probably... Oh, God, yeah. There we go. Cool. So he had 57% James Robinson, 44% Justin Jackson, and 8% Alexander Madison.
Okay, and 35% Ronald Jones. And what about his brother, Papa?
That's a little bit easier to spell.
You got that one, Moose.
Yeah. It's just because Chipotle's not good. I don't eat it, so... Yeah, I got to come in with the spicy takes every now and then. So, he had 73% Joe Mixon, which is pretty good.
Damn. Okay.
13% Justin Jackson, 12% James Robinson, 10% Ronald Jones.
So he went the opposite approach. He went the leverage running back angle, which I don't think is the right way on a... When there's one value running back, sure. When there's three value running backs, I'm not sure that's the way to go. But again, these guys are pros. They're very good. Who am I to tell them? Just from an outsider perspective, it doesn't seem great. What about... There's one more I wanted to ask you to look at. Who was it, Moose?
I don't know.
Did Mock Lovin enter 150 in this?
Let's see here. He had one lineup, and he went Robinson, Montgomery, Justin Jackson, and it wasn't even unique.
what the hell's going on with that? All right, who's
He got duped 36 times, just for the record.
That was like a cash lineup. I wonder if he's entered his cash lineup just in case.
Yeah.
Who's the highest performing, highest finishing 150 maxer? And let's see what they did. A little survivorship bias here.
Bills fan 777.
Oh, he's a pro. He actually won the Christmas slate, I think, for like 200K or something. Very good player.
So he went 95% Justin Jackson, 72% Ronald Jones, 45% James Robinson.
That's interesting. That's a very good approach, obviously. Very tight running back core. I haven't studied his lineups too much. I'm not 100% sure if this is what he does normally, but suffice it to say that you play 95% of the value running back who scores 30. I think you're going to have a pretty good time. And just go to his quarterbacks. How much Joe Burrow did he play?
Let's see here. 100% locked in Joe Burrow 150.
Fucking legend. You got to be kidding.
That is the most legend shit. That is the most legend shit I've ever seen.
Wait, hold on. What? That is insane. That is nuts.
Bills fan.
Dude, that's so sick.
That's the most greatest thing. Bills fan, Just stack the shit out of Cincinnati. Man, there we
No
go. That is
Fanalytics there.
no Fanalytics, just straight cash. That
Dude,
is
fucking time traveler. How in the world is that's so sick. I'm just amazed. That's incredible. That's actually amazing.
yeah.
Did he
Look at
did Bills fan enter that's insane. So it's 63% T Higgins who went off for 40. How does this dude not win a milli? That's so crazy.
dude, imagine 150 stacking Cincinnati, getting everything right, and then still not
Not
getting
winning
first.
the milli after he throws for 500 yards. That's nuts.
That's
Can you go to
actually
the 444 or something to see if he like did this psycho just have 100% Joe Burrow across all lineups?
hold on, I just want to see. I was looking to see if he had anything else, and he had a bunch of Philly defense. As Rocky says, yeah, Burrow was over 12% in the milli. It surprised him that it was that high. It surprised all of us when we did it. Did not expect
Yeah.
it to be that high.
I mean, I think our projections have 4%. And I even saw some other industry projections, maybe as high as like 6-7%, but 12% was wild. Naturally, those for fucking 500 yards.
So he did not enter the 4-4-4-4.
Devastating. Did he enter Did he win the Wildcat? Maybe go the Wildcat.
So he did win the Wildcat, and
Okay.
of course it fucking crashed again. Hold on.
Okay, because I'm curious to see if he if he had 100% Joe Burrow, the greatest conviction of all time.
Yep, 100% Joe Burrow, 100% T Higgins, 100% Justin.
What a
Jackson.
legend, dude. Put him in the Hall of Fame right now.
Hold on.
Just
So look at
incredible.
this. So he locked in Burrow, Justin Jackson, Cooper Kupp, T Higgins. Tell me that's not a core.
Not bad. Not bad. Absolutely not bad to do that. Jesus. And he only had 5 lineups. The max is 125. Man. Shout out Bills fan. Absolutely.
Bills fan, you get my seal of approval as a Bengals fan.
That is sick. That is so sick. Well, congrats to him. He's let me see. Hold on. He's ranked in the top 50 of rotogrinders, I believe. But
he's about to be number 1.
yeah, no shit.
Just
Auto number 1.
Yeah.
I saw his tweet. I saw his tweet about winning the Wildcat or whatever it was. Oh shit, hell of a week, right? And then little did I know this dude locked Joe Burrow. Wow, that's amazing. I'll close out the show with this. Jack was actually talking to me recently about 150 maxing. I think it was today actually. He said that on their weeks where he really likes one quarterback, but there's not a ton else he likes. He won't do this on weeks where there are a lot of good game stacks. But like I think it was the Kyler versus Detroit week, which didn't work out great. He played 100% Kyler Murray in his 150 on the main slate, and clearly if that's the stack that goes off, if you're able to identify it correctly, like Joe Burrow and Bills fan, there's massive upside. But you have a lot of conviction. You also have to have a lot of risk tolerance in the event that game stack doesn't do well. Now your 150 is trash.
I think it's the same as when you play Showdown and you just lock a captain. Like,
For sure.
Like you need him to be the highest scoring person, whereas if you lock a quarterback, it needs to that stack needs to be the highest scoring. So
It either needs to be the highest scoring or this quarterback scoring needs to be flat, right? Like all the guys scored like between 18 and 22 or something.
Exactly, yeah. So interesting concept. I still like the more quarterbacks approach than not. But again, I'll leave it with this. Do you think we need to maybe expand our horizons and say maybe not always play 6, maybe play 4, maybe play 8?
Absolutely. I think it's definitely something to not be locked into for sure, and something, especially as we get towards the end of the season, less and less games, or even more and more games this week, definitely something to think about. So, especially as games continue to suck, right? There aren't as many games we want to stack. So for sure, I think it's definitely merit to it.
Definitely. As we close the show, we will go to duplicates, and we'll see that 221 people did this dupe lineup train.
It was Mock Levin's lineup, right?
With exploded Achilles, James Robinson.
God, that sucks. Bills fan, by the way, Bills fan won the Wildcat with James Robinson.
Wow. Again, shows that if you play your contests correctly, then you don't necessarily need the optimal. Question here from Cooper. What do you think are the best contests to enter when you only have $20?
Yeah, so if you are not a veteran or you're a beginner, then you enter the no veterans, the beginner contest on FanDuel DraftKings Yahoo, right? I assume if you're watching this, you're probably beyond that level, but it has to be said, right? If you can play those beginner contests, they're free money essentially. Hammer those. Obviously, once you get beyond those, we talk about in the Ultimate Guide, which you haven't read, check out Occupy Fantasy, but leagues on FanDuel, 100-player contests, basically small field GPPs in any capacity, any exponential payout that's less than 200 players is the most bang for your buck in DFS because it gives you really high ROI. You don't have to hit the optimal lineups to win, and scores are a lot lower to win in those, and you get more consistent wins in your pocket. So they're called leagues on FanDuel. They're called contests on DraftKings, or just any small field GPP less than 300 players. Those are really the best contests you want to hammer.
Yeah, the leagues on FanDuel are just absolutely great.
For sure.
Yeah. So if we look over here, the last thing we will look at is the flex usage, which surprised me. I guess with James Robinson getting injured, I guess that makes more sense that running back's not higher in the top 1%. See, there was a leverage in wide receiver on flex and the opposite of leverage for tight ends, where the 12% had a tight end in the flex, but 7% of the top 1% had tight end in the flex. Always good to see that go down.
Suck a double tight ends. I'm surprised running backs weren't more, right? We talked about so many value running backs. It was probably a good week to lock in 3 running backs, and only 40% of the field did. So that's interesting. I think that's probably an edge, and we probably would have seen that green bar really skyrocket had Robinson not get injured.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So cool. So any last lingering thoughts, words, comments, concerns you want to add before I take us out of here?
If you guys know who this week's Bengal stack is, let us know. We'll lock them in like Bills fan 777, and we'll all print money on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. So until next time, I think Brian will be doing a show Saturday this time with New Year's.
No holiday, thankfully. So we'll be doing hungover, or everyone will be hungover watching the show on Saturday, but we'll be doing one for sure.
Definitely. So cool. Until next time, Moose and Brian from Occupy Fantasy. Have a good night.